Hello everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to be creating another summer themed card. This is another under the water scene. And I'll be using Spellbinders Stitching Die of the Month Club for June. This set is called Stitched Shell Card Front. And here is a look at this. It's very ornate and pretty. There's not a lot of stitching required for this set. And let me take this out of the envelope and I'll give you a closer look at this. So this large die right here will fit perfectly on an A2 sized card. It doesn't look like it, but it'll just fit edge to edge. This is an A2 sized panel I'm holding up. And then you have this beautiful ornate piece that goes inside of that. And then there are two more dies. There's this beautiful ornate piece and then another little square with the docked corners. And then you get three shells, and these three shells are the stitching pieces. So you have a large one that goes in the center at the top, and then two smaller ones, and these will go at the sides. The two shells at the bottom are also meant for the largest of the two shells. I went ahead and cut everything out off camera, and let me show you what I used to cut these out. So I'm using some Spellbinders cardstock. I used these two dies to cut out this blue panel. It's called Raindrop Cardstock. And look at how detailed they are. So pretty. Next, I used this square die with the docked corners, the more ornate one, to cut out a piece of purple cardstock. And this purple cardstock is called Royal Amethyst. It's kind of a deep, pretty purple. And then using the smallest of the two squares, I cut out this pretty piece of soft navy blue cardstock. I already stitched the shells, and let me give you a closer look at these. So to create these shells, I wanted a lot of shimmer. So I used some green Lunar Paste from Simon Hurley. And here's a look at the larger one. To stitch this, I just used one strand of the embroidery floss. I tried two and I tried three strands together. It was just too thick. And a single strand just made it look a little more elegant. So there's the larger of the two shells, and here's the smaller ones. And I showed you at the back, I just tape all of my ends down with a little bit of the yellow tape. And here's my leftover bits of cardstock. These have the Lunar Pastes on them. The color I used on the larger shell is Minty Fresh. I think I'm holding up the wrong one there. That one's Later Gator. Okay, here's my Minty Fresh. So that's what I used on the large shell. And then the smaller ones, I used this brighter green, which is called Later Gator. And I just simply smeared it on a piece of cardstock with my fingers, let it dry, and then cut them out. I don't use a lot of pastes in my card crafting, but I sure do love Simon Hurley's Lunar Paste. They are really fun to work with. And they don't dry out in the bottles like a lot of pastes do. So let's start putting this card together. It didn't take much time at all to create. And I'm going to glue my ornate piece onto the dark blue cardstock. Just adding little dabs of glue here and there. And this is my Barely Arts Precision Glue. I love this stuff. I use it all the time. And as you can see, this fits edge to edge on the A2 sized card. It just fits perfectly. You could, of course, put it on a larger sized card and it'd look stunning. But everything's going to go down flat. And now for the purple panel. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a minute. I'll set this aside. I'm using the Clear Stamp and Die of the Month Club to stamp out some coral and some seaweed using one of the larger stamps from this set. I used this set in my last video, and I will link to that at the end of this video. But I'm going to emboss it with some green embossing powder on this purple cardstock. It's going to look really pretty. I already stamped it out, as you can see at the top right, with some green ink, and I really liked the look of that as well. I wanted to keep the color scheme for this card to the greens, blues, and purples. So let's melt this embossing powder. And I'm not even going to color it in. I think it just looks beautiful as is. And once I melt it, it is nice and smooth and shiny. And then I can use the coordinating die to cut this out. I'll just use a little bit of the yellow tape to keep this in place, and I'll take it off screen and run it through my Platinum 6. And here it is. I really like that one for this card. Next, we're moving on to the sentiment. I'm going to stamp it right onto this little square. So I'll add some anti-static powder first, and then I'll stamp out the sentiment with some Versamark ink. And this one just says, "See you soon." And I do like to stamp it out a few times to make it nice and sticky. And then this time I'm going to stamp it out with a light blue embossing powder. I love how some embossing powders really show up well on the darker cardstock. You have to buy a specific kind of embossing powder to do this, because not all of them will show up on the dark cardstocks. But I'll leave a link to the ones I'm using. And then I'm going to glue this down flat. Next, I'll glue down the seaweed and the coral. And now for the shells, I'm going to use more glue on these, and I'm putting quite a bit of glue behind them just to get them to stick. I'll put down the largest shells first. So one up at the top, and then the two at the bottom. And they just fit perfectly on this die. And now for the 4 smaller shells. And again, using one thread of the embroidery floss just looked a lot more dainty and ornate. I pulled out some Spellbinders pearls. These ones are called oyster pearls. So I thought they went perfectly on this card, and I'm going to put a few around the sentiment as well. This is such a beautiful die set. I love how detailed it is. And here is a close-up look at the finished card. You can kind of see that shine of the Lunar Paste. I hope you enjoyed this close-up look at another stitching card. I just love these. This one, again, is from Spellbinders. It's their June stitching die of the month, called Stitched Shell Card Front. I'll leave all of the links in the description box below if you want to check those out. Thanks for watching, my friends, and I hope you have a wonderful crafty day. Bye!